I'm glad he moved out of state. Posted his mind.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the September 11th, 2019 meeting of the Ascension Parish Planning Commission. Please note that all commissioners are present. We're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, but before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like us all to observe a moment of silence in honor of September 11th, 2001, and all the heroes that we had that lost their lives on that day. So if everyone please rise for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we get staff introduction, please?
Stacy Webb, Secretary for the Planning Commission.
Cody Martin, the attorney for the Planning Commission.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
Eric Poche, Parish Planner.
Sean Scherow, Ascension Parish, ERA.
All right, item number 5 on the agenda is the chairman's comments. The chair has no comments tonight. Item number 6 is a public comment on any agenda item. We do have several public hearings scheduled, but if you would like to speak on any agenda item that isn't scheduled for a public hearing, you may do so now. Ms. Stacy, if we have anyone signed up to speak?
No.
All right, we will move on to item number 7, the general business, and item number 8 is the staff report for the subdivision status as of September 2019. Staff?
Yes, sir. You have in your packet the current status of the subdivisions that have previously been approved. As always, the ones that any changes from the previous month have asterisks by them. If there are any questions that you have, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions by the commission? Yes, Mr. Fournier.
I have some additions to that,
Okay.
to the staff report.
Let's have that first before I get to you, Mr. Scheck-Snyder. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to report to the commission that three items that took place recently. First off, the parish council has adopted the new fill ordinance. It's a new drainage ordinance. The fill portion is part of that. The two big items that are part of that fill ordinance is that we're now requiring properties to build at 2 feet over base flood elevation, which in the past it was 1 foot. And most importantly is that we're now requiring them to be we're allowing 3 foot average fill on any property with a maximum of 4 feet in any one spot. And what we're trying to do with that is to accommodate any type of irregularities that might occur in a lot. So in some areas it might require a little bit more fill, in some areas less. But in no place can you put more than 4 feet, and the average has to be a maximum of 3 feet. All right. In addition to that, the council passed at its last agenda and its last meeting the 5 infrastructure development districts, and this is a new requirement that's basically by ordinance. And before we can approve any final plat, the property owner, the developer, has to decide whether they want to have public streets or private streets. If they go private streets, we put a note on the plat that those streets will be maintained by the homeowners association. If they go with public streets, they have to create an infrastructure development district, and that allows us to collect a millage on each property within that subdivision, and that millage goes into a pot of money. We create an account for that subdivision, and those monies are used to maintain the streets within that subdivision. The 5 projects that were formed or introduced ordinance was Brookstone, Camellia Cove, Cambry Oaks, Germany Oaks, and Highland Trace. All right, so those were the 5 projects that will be the first IDDs that we established by the parish. And lastly, I want to address the comment that was made at the previous Planning Commission meeting about the tree ordinance and placement of trees and things of this sort. Mr. Poche and I toured 6 subdivisions after that comment was made. That was about 2 weeks ago. And about half of those subdivisions that we looked at were basically not in compliance. And they were not in compliance based on the trees that were out in front of the houses, all right? Some didn't have trees. Other properties had a tree, and you can see where the property owner actually removed the tree and decided they didn't want a tree in their front yard. Most of them, though, in terms of non-compliance, was based on the caliper of the tree. The ordinance states that they have to have 2.5-inch caliper trees. we saw mainly 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inch to 2 inches, somewhere in that range. Almost all of them had trees in the park. All the park trees were in place. So that was a good comment. And we're now crafting a response with legal in terms of how to go after the people that didn't comply with the ordinance. So I'll leave it at that, all right?
Good enough. Mr. Scheck-Snyder, you had a question?
Yeah, Mr. Fournier, one of the questions I have is regarding the infrastructure districts. And specifically, it's regarding the timing of when the developer will choose or request to have it public or private. You said that it will be right before the final. Is there a way that we can have that at the preliminary portion?
No, the ordinance that was passed says that it has to be created prior to the approval of the final plat. Now, one thing that the ordinance does is reference the state law that was created, I guess, 10 years ago that allows us to establish these districts. And that state law requires us to have 2 public hearings. So what we're doing now is trying to schedule those public hearings, one meeting after the other. We can't have 2 public hearings in one night, obviously. So at the last council meeting, we introduced the ordinance and we had the first public hearing. The next meeting, we're going to have the public hearing that would ordinarily go with the approval of an ordinance. So they have the public hearing and then they'll approve the ordinance. And after that point, we'll basically record the document and the district will be formed, all right? So, yeah, we can't do it at the preliminary plat stage, and it gives them some leeway to make a decision as to what they want to do, whether they want to go private or public.
But I guess what gets us is, when it comes back to us for final, we can't have any type of holdings on it. It's like when it comes up for a final plat approval, we can't, would we?
The district has to be in place before it comes to y'all.
Okay, that's what I want to make
Yes.
sure of.
But I
Exactly.
am researching and trying to figure out a way if we can speed up the process to have the public hearing where that's done before it comes.
Okay.
It will be done before it comes to y'all, but not necessarily at preliminary, but not all the way at the end at final. In other words, in the interim. there may-
Possibly during the
petition may be
construction
filed to start
phase?
the process. Correct.
Okay.
Would we be doing those public hearings, or where would
No,
those
that's
be?
No,
the
the
council.
council will be.
Okay.
Yeah. It has to be created by ordinance, so the council has to do that.
Okay.
And that's all the report that I have.
Any other questions for staff? Before we move on to the engineering staff report and Mr. Giroux?
No report this evening.
We have the, on the agenda, there's a notification of the expiration of the subdivision preliminary plat approvals that was 24 months without beginning construction on Dutchtown Vines, which was approved in August of 2017, and Black Bayou Estates, which was approved in January of 2017.
Yes. I'm told that there are going to be representatives from each one of the developers are supposed to be here to speak on that. Basically, in going around the parish and trying to keep up with everything, we noticed that it looked like very little construction activity had been going on through these 2 developments. So we wanted to bring it to your attention, and it's required that it be reported to you through the engineering staff report from the ERA. And so that's why it is where it is on the agenda.
All right, well, we have, yes, sir, are you for which subdivision?
Edward Stafford with the Dutchtown Vines.
Okay,
We we are waiting on DHH submittal package, and that's the only thing we're lacking to submit to get our permit to get started. When we got the preliminary plat, Mr. Jeff Cook had done all the work up until that point, and he passed away. Then another guy in his office had kind of taken over to try and get some of the stuff finished up. Then the company got sold to Southeast Engineers, so now we're with a whole different set of engineers trying to get things finished up. All the people from Jeff's company don't work for Southeast Engineers anymore, so it's been a lot of fun. So we're to the point where we have submitted our plans and everything to Eric and them, and the only thing that we're lacking is a DHH submittal, in which we are working on right now and hope to have pretty soon. But we've had the whole situation of Mr. Cook passing away and then his business selling and us getting transferred has kind of got us behind a pretty good bit.
Mr. Schexnayder?
Mr. Edward, this is the subdivision that was near that proposed, or that old super site or something like that? Is that the one that we're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is that possibly what's holding up part of the DHH permits? Is, qualifications of any of that?
No, sir.
Because that was one of the big concerns that I remember when
It
we moved
is,
this, that we mentioned a lot of
it has
this.
strictly been Mr. Cook passing away and then us trying to, he did a lot of the work himself. So trying to go back and retrieve all his information and all that has been pretty much the holdup on everything that we've done. But no, it has nothing to do with that. We're just waiting on DHH to get the design review and the submittal package to the parish. So that's the only thing I'm waiting on now. Mr. Steve Burnham has that with Engineering and Associates. So Southeast doesn't do that work, so now I've had to sub it out to somebody else. So, and when I was with Mr. Cook, it was a one package thing, so now I'm lucky enough to deal with two engineers instead of one. So, and have dealt with 4 of them in between it being sold. So that's the.
What type of time frame do you have in your permit?
I would guess within the next 30 days. I mean, that's the only thing we're lacking. We've got approval for everything else except DHH, and we just have to do the submittal and the design for the treatment plant. That's the only thing we're lacking. And
Mr.
we've been
Dumas,
in
did you-
contact with Eric about that, so.
So just to be clear, you're waiting on a packet to submit to DHH? You have not submitted DHH?
Correct.
So once you get.
We're getting once we get the submittal package ready, then we have to give it to the Ascension Parish, and then that's the only thing we have to do to get our permit.
And you're about 30 days away from getting the packet?
I would hope sooner than that, but I
Give or
would
take.
say 30 days.
This was approved January 11 of 2017,
No.
No,
It's
August
9th.
August.
9th.
August 9th of 17?
So Eric, what's a normal time frame at DHH?
It can be, I guess it depends on how much stroke you got. I mean, I've heard people getting stuff in 30 days. I've heard people getting stuff in 90 days. There was, and Mr. Giroux may be able to answer this a little bit better than myself, but I knew that there used to be a 60-day window where if they didn't provide a response, it was automatically deemed to be approved, and I think they moved that to 90 days. Do you?
I anticipate probably a 30-day turnaround. Once, the key is, have they submitted the complete package to DHH? Have you all submitted the package to them
No.
yet for the
No,
review?
he hasn't.
No, we're in the process of doing that right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, usually, once it's submitted, it's about 30 days, and then you get about another 2 weeks to be able to turn around responses. Very few times has it's been approved on the first go-around. My gut feel is it's probably a 45 to 60 days,
Okay.
if they haven't submitted yet.
Well, my concern is code number 17405H1 says that if no construction activity takes place within 24 months, no construction activity may be undertaken, no lots, parcels of land sold, transferred, conveyed, prior to approval of the planning commission, the preliminary plat being automatically rescinded. So if I'm reading this code correctly, after 24 months, which would have been last month, if my math is right, the preliminary plat would have been considered automatically rescinded and it has to be resubmitted. Is that right, Cody?
Well, be careful of the wording you choose, because resubmitted, it doesn't, it does, it says it has to be resubmitted and then considered by the planning commission for review.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily say for a new application.
Right, no, but it has to be the
Correct.
preliminary plat has to be rescinded and it's automatically rescinded. So that
Correct, unless you
if we're
guys
20
unless you guys take exact action to extend it, correct.
But but can you extend something after the 24 months has already expired and it's already automatically rescinded? Because 24 months would have been August, right, of 19.
Well,
September 9th would
But
have
you gotta
been
read
the
it together,
24th
because
month.
the first sentence says the same thing of 24 months, that the developer shall resubmit all plans and construction, all plats and construction plans to the commission for review, and if changes in the construction plans are warranted, then the construction plan shall undergo review. Following approval by the planning commission, then the developer may commence construction.
Right. But it's automatically rescinded, but the originally approved plat
Correct.
was
The plat
automatically
is
rescinded.
automatically rescinded, but I think by reading the ordinance, it doesn't necessarily have to go through the entire process again, but it does have to come back to you guys for review and approval to decide if you're gonna allow it to go forward or not.
If he does have to, if it is rescinded and he has to come back for approval, do they have to go through the new code differences since then?
I'm gonna have to research that one for you, Wade.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Because
say
that is
enough in the statute.
we've had
Yeah.
the traffic, we've had the, and that's all very important.
And I think that's what that would mean by if changes in construction plans are warranted. The changes would be warranted because it no longer complies with the code. Because as I'm reading this, the preliminary plat would be rescinded after 24 months. He then has to resubmit the plat, and if changes are warranted, which in this case, it's because it doesn't comply with the current code, that have to be resubmitted for approval.
I'll research it for you and get back to you on it. It's gonna take me going on to do some research as to the intent behind these statutes and see what else I can find in these ordinances,
My,
reading it as a whole.
I mean, because if it's already expired, I don't think you can grant an extension of something once the plat's been automatically rescinded. If this would have been 2 months ago, when we're at 22 months, maybe we could have. But, I mean, you're now at month 25?
no,
No, I
actually,
think it's
September
probably
9th,
24th month.
September 9th would have been the 24th month. So he's out by 2 days.
That's out by 2 days.
So
Which we didn't have a meeting 2 days ago.
This
But-
counts as that meeting.
this counts at that meeting.
But it's automatically rescinded. In other words, it's not that you take action to rescind, it's automatically rescinded at the 24-month.
But Cody, if he's here on that 24th month, does the commission have the authority to grant him an extension?
I don't see
Because
where-
obviously I've had some extenuating circumstances. My engineer died.
I mean, the problem, what you're saying, Aaron, is the code doesn't require the ERA to even bring it to your attention until the 24-month period lapse. So it kind of goes in different places. That's why I said I would
Well,
need some time to research.
Actually, it doesn't require them to bring it to our attention at all. It just says it expires after 24
No, it
months.
says, the last sentence is, the ERA shall be responsible for notifying the planning commission of a subdivider's failure to begin construction within the 24-month duration. Notification shall be in the form of a status update report presented at a regularly scheduled planning commission meeting.
Which we get every month
I
when we
can
just
tell you
went
why
through.
that provision was in the code. It was added to the code to make sure that they got they got an opportunity to come before us for extension or for an affirmative action, because there was a question as to whether something that had been approved could just expire on its own without an affirmative action. And there were people who had an intent of wanting to kill all subdivision. So it was brought back for a reason. I mean, I remember when that was done a long time ago. So and the intent at the time was for someone to get a fair shake and an opportunity to explain why they haven't been able to start. There were environmental permits that were required that were taking longer than 24 months. There were a lot of issues that were affecting someone being able to physically start constructing a subdivision, other than just clearing the land. And that was the rationale behind it. So I believe the history would show that there's purpose and intent to offer them an opportunity for an extension.
And I think to Aaron's point a little bit here is there's other areas of law where once a deadline passes, it's done, particularly in prescription. Once a lawsuit prescribes, you can't unprescribe it. And I think we work in the same area, so I hear what he's saying on that. In listening to the discussion though, and in listening to what Cody says, if ERA is not required to bring it to us until the 24th month, and here we sit on the 24th month with this, I think we do have the discretion to extend the preliminary plat based upon extenuating circumstances. I don't know that it's expired yet. Now, obviously, if he did not show up tonight, and then it would have expired without us having to take any action. But I think everybody's trying to operate within at least what is perceived to be the meaning of the ordinances here.
Right.
Well, I mean, we get notification every month. That's the subdivision report we just went through.
Right.
So action could have been taken last month or the month before. It just says they're required to notify us when, basically, as I'm reading it, when a subdivision's plat is rescinded, because it, I mean, the sentence clearly says if no activity takes place within 24 months, the plat being automatically rescinded.
And I don't disagree with you, Aaron. I think the part that I'm having trouble with is the first sentence that says, if no construction begins within 24 months. You are correct, the plat's automatically rescinded, but then what's the effect of that? Because the first sentence just says it needs to come back to y'all for review,
Right,
and
it
then you
says-
guys make the determination whether you're gonna allow it to go forward or not.
Right, says but it says he has to resubmit. Yeah, I mean, it's the developer shall resubmit all plats to the planning commission for review. So after the 24 months, he has to resubmit the plat, and then if changes are warranted, such as a change because it
In
no
code.
longer applies, is no longer in compliance with the code, then then it shall undergo review following approval. And if no activity has taken place within the
So
24 months.
let's get him on next
it's-
month's agenda, have him resubmit everything, and then you guys can make a determination on what you wanna do.
Well, if I'm in the 24 months, can I ask for a 90-day extension just to get this? And then at that point, if I can't get it done.
That's what we're discussing, is whether or not we have the authority to grant you an
I think you're
extension.
outside of the 24 months, we're in 25 months now.
Well,
Approval's
I'm
August
I'm
9th.
2 days
How
over.
can it be a
No, you'd be a
25th?
month and 2 days.
It'd have been a
over.
month and 2 days, because it'd have been,
September 9th of 20,
No, I'm sorry, on August 9th of
it was
2015.
August
no, he
9th.
was approved on August
So
9th.
your 2 years would be August 9th of 2019.
Now, however, does it count when we approve the minutes of that meeting?
No, it's gonna be the action of approval.
August,
Okay.
it's August 9 of
So
2019.
Cody, do you,
So
are
we
you,
were just informed of
Cody, is
this
it your opinion that we don't
a
have the
few days
authority?
ago.
I understand. Cody, is it your opinion we don't have the authority to grant an extension?
I would like for y'all to put it on next month's agenda and give me some time to research it before y'all take any action. Because I think this ordinance kind of contradicts itself, and I need to do some research to figure out what the intent behind it was, and I need to go through the rest of the code and see if there's anything else that clears up the intent behind this one.
So Cody, should our motion be to defer the matter till next month?
That's what I would recommend at this point.
I would like to, if you're going to make that motion, I would like that motion to be without prejudice. In other words, whatever effects that may have occurred or may occur between now and October that is for an expiration time period. If we're at the 24th month now, then it should be the 24th month in October while we get an answer to this. So I would make the motion to defer that without prejudice if you're going to make that motion. Mr.
I'll make the motion to defer this matter without prejudice until next month.
And
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Chasson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none passes. We'll see you next month with hopefully a better answer for you.
Can't, okay, so.
I would try and get those permits done, though.
Well, that's what I was about to ask. If I get it done within the next 30 days, then where do I stand? So then I'm within the 24 months and I just need to submit it and I can get my permit?
That's what we're gonna research.
That's what
So
council.
so we're not gonna know that, even if I
No.
get my permit?
I mean, we may know it before next month. As soon as I come up with an answer, I'll get with Eric and he can get with you and tell you what we determined.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, sir. All right, is anyone here on the
Black Bayou.
Black Bayou Estates?
William Purser with Quality Engineering and Mike DeLuca, the developer. So, we had a pre-construction meeting on this project on December 20th, 2018. 2018, yeah. And have a construction permit and
We cleared parts of the property and got started surveying and to start construction. We just had some financial difficulties of ownership, and we got that underway and start 30 days. We do have our permit and started.
Any questions?
So this one's at 32 months.
Right.
Yeah.
But they got their permit.
They're saying they started construction.
They're
but
full
it's gonna be a
permitted and they
question.
started construction.
Eric, are they fully I mean, we have full permit, construction plans?
Yeah, all the
Everything.
construction plans have been approved and
They
they had a
started clearing,
pre-construction
you did
meeting.
some clearing, you started
When-
some
So,
construction.
so if they've started construction, then why are they on the list as having not started construction?
Well, I went out there and I wanted to get them up here to make sure that we got some verification that they started construction. Because every day I passed by there and I didn't see anything going on, and so I figured it would be best to bring it up to you guys since we were doing the other one. So that's why I suggested
So by
putting
your
it on
saying
there.
that nothing is going on, and they're saying something is going on, who's right?
We need to get verification from them. I mean, we'll get verification from them, And we have discussed this during the week since the agenda came out. We've discussed it between me and them, and they know they're gonna need to get me some verification, and once that's there, then we're good, as far as I'm concerned.
Are you satisfied that they verified construction has begun?
Well, I mean, I need to get verification for it. That's why they're on the meeting tonight. That's why they're on the agenda tonight.
What all have y'all done?
We had started the surveying and then the layout, the lot layout and clearing. And I think one of the problems was we didn't submit the SWAT plan. And we ordered that so we can have the erosion control plan out there.
Have y'all cleared and grubbed the property?
No, sir, we just start clearing for where they can do the plot layout on the property lines.
So when did you start construction?
Less than 30 days after our permit,
And their permit was,
December 28th.
December 20th.
Of 2018?
Yes.
So you started construction, and I don't know if that's a defined term in the code, but you started surveying in January 2018?
I think some of the surveying was done in March of this year.
We start clearing the
Some of
property
the other
lines so they
stuff,
can
I
get in
think
there.
they said they'd done sooner, or
You started clearing property lines in January?
Yes, sir, as soon as we got the property, the permit.
but no clearing, no grubbing? Give me one example of some work that is construction defined that has been done on the property.
Can you define construction, like that was?
Like, in other words, has any dirt been moved? Like, I mean, have y'all gotten
We cleared it
access?
So they can get access to their surveying equipment and hit property lines, so we didn't have an added extra cost with their work. And we can submit all invoices that they've already invoiced us for and pictures on site.
Eric, what do you consider, what does the department consider beginning construction?
We had this discussion with Cody.
That's case law for days on this one, and it's all over the place.
Yes.
And it's what?
It's all over the place.
Okay.
Some of it indicates that just clearing the land,
There's case law that says turning a shovel of dirt is considered construction.
right.
And then there's some case law that says it takes more than just preliminary actions, it takes actual construction of the approved project. So it's gonna be a gray area on that one. I'm trying to find some case law.
And
So,
one of the
Eric-
big reasons I wanted
I
to
think
bring
we
this
could
up
defer to the
also.
less onerous, it would be my preference to defer to the less onerous. If they were doing stuff in January, then they started construction, and I don't see why we need to have them here, honestly. And I'm assuming that you're being honest with us. You're not sworn to tell the truth. This isn't a court of law, but
No, I mean, I don't mind, like, even submitting documentations of surveys, pictures, and y'all can even put on the next agenda if you'd like, until you got those documentations.
Make the same motion that we made for the first one?
Well, I was just gonna ask Eric, so you're working with them to verify this, and
Yes.
then you and Cody can come to terms, right?
Yes.
I'll make the same motion.
okay. Motion to defer this to next month without prejudice
Second.
by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Chasson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition here? None. Motion passes. Oh.
Opposition.
We do have opposition. I'm sorry. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Christie?
Yes.
Mr. Chasson?
Yes.
Mr. Schexnayder?
Nay.
And the chair votes in favor, so the count is 6-1, so the motion passes. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Too long.
All right, item number 10 is a motion to approve or deny the minutes and written decisions of the August 14th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion. So moved.
By Mr. Chasson, second by Mr. Furman. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 11 is the consent agenda. Item number 11A is the affidavit of mortgage declaration for Manuel Lim Calamia, if I said that right, Lot A1, 1034 West New River Road, Gonzales, Louisiana. Item 10B, or 11B, is the final plat approval for Woodgate Townhomes, Phases 4 and 5, GWS Engineering, Inc., in Council District 8. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda? So move. Motion by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Schexnayder. All in favor?
Hold on, Mr. Chairman, I got
Oh,
a
sorry.
question. I just would like to ask, for the final plat approval on Woodgate Townhomes, Phases 4 and 5, has everything been satisfied? Do we have anything that has been outlying?
No, it has been satisfied,
Okay,
yes.
that's all I wanted to know.
All right, are you seconding the motion then?
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay, second by Mr. Schexnayder. All in favor? Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 12 is a public hearing to approve or deny the following family partitions. Number 12A is the Anthony R. Ardoin property, lots A2A, A2B, and A2C. McGlynn Taylor and this is in Council District 5. Yes, ma'am.
Ellen Jackson with McLean Taylor Incorporated, asking for your approval.
All right. Any staff comments on this?
No, the division meets the current requirements of the family petition section of the code.
All right, we'll open a public hearing on this. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this matter? We'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, and/or a motion by the commissioner?
Have all comments been addressed?
Yes.
Move we approve.
Motion by Mr. Furman, second.
Second.
By Mr. Schexnayder, all in favor? Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 10B is the Donald Fauché property, tracks B1 and B2. Mr. Falgu, you're here for Equipmont,
Yes,
with
sir.
WJ Equipmont Surveyors.
James Falgo representing Mr. Fauché on the following family partition, asking the commission for approval.
Staff,
Yes, it meets the requirements and all comments have been addressed.
we will open a public hearing on this matter. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this matter? And we will close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, and/or motion?
We're creating a nonconformity, are we not?
Was that, I'm sorry?
We're creating a nonconformity, right?
No.
We're putting a property line right down the middle of a residence. How can you not be creating a?
It's existing.
That's an existing line. That's an existing nonconformity.
Okay.
Are we making it worse?
Mm-mm. We're not moving that property line. Still there.
Right. Move to adopt. Move to
Motion by Mr. Dumas, second. Second. By Mr. Christie, all in favor? Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 12C is the Howard K. Moore property, lots B5A1A and B5A1B. And this one, I guess, is yours, Mr. Falco, Earls and Associate.
Yes, sir. Representing Mr. Trent Cannon and Sharon Moore on the following partition, asking the commission for approval.
All right, staff?
The subdivision does not currently meet the requirements of the family partition based on the fact that Mr. Cannon received the adjacent lot to the west of B5A1B. After the rules were changed in 2015, he received the lot from his mother in another family partition. He's not eligible to receive one. He submitted a letter with his packet. I don't know if anyone's here to speak on that on their behalf or not, but that's the way it stands. As far as the plat, all items have been addressed as far as all the other notes on the map.
All right, Mr. Falco, you want to address that? Or, yes, sir. What's your name?
Trent Cannon.
Okay. Yes, sir.
This property that's adjoining to it, I've already got a mortgage on, so that's the reason I can't subdivide this one and join it with my mortgage. And the reason I'm doing it is to put a home off my mother-in-law. She flooded in 16 and she's living in a pretty ratty camper. So I bought a FEMA trailer, one of the leftovers from 16, and that's what I'm gonna put on this lot, set up for her. So that's the reason I need to get it divided.
All right, we'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this matter. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this?
No.
And we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions, comments?
We've kind of had something like this come to us before.
Yeah, we had a
We
case.
we can't approve a variance on something that he's basically causing. It's a self-imposed issue that is requesting the variance. So, that's my big issue with this.
The thing is, you would adjoin it to his existing lot, but the mortgage, Capital One won't allow you to do stuff like that.
Who owns the current property that he's trying to,
It's his mom,
My mother.
so it's still family property.
Is
Not
there-
going to another residence.
is there already a residence on the property?
There's a, yeah, on
There's on B5A1 where mother
B5A1,
lives.
yeah, the mother's.
And the subdivided piece is the half acre closest to the piece that she gave me.
So he can't so he can't just put the trailer on it without he has to subdivide it.
That's the,
Yeah.
Can we do a variance?
We'd have to do a variance, but he's causing the need for the variance with his own actions.
No, he's, by subdivided, if you subdivide it, he doesn't need a variance to put a trailer on the property, but he doesn't meet the requirements to subdivide. But can you grant a variance within the code that would allow him to put a temporary, just thinking out
Well, he
loud,
only
trying to
missed
figure
the
out a
3
way to do
years by a
this.
couple of months. I think was to get you.
But it's not the 3 years, it said
No, it
he's,
was a code, yeah.
it said he's already,
Yeah.
already,
And if he does have children, but they're all under the age of 18, something like
Right.
that. So there's no other, and he's the only child.
Well, he can't refamily, the purpose of the family partition is that you can only do it once. You can't do a family
Yeah.
partition of
Well,
a
this
family
is-
partition.
This is going to his wife's mother, I guess, yeah. But
yeah, I-
keeping
I
his
just-
name instead of, yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically his inheritance is the property.
Now, what he could potentially do, instead of going to a family partition, they could do an actual partition sale of the property and subdivide it that way. They
You
can't,
gotta get approved through y'all.
no, but if it's not a family partition, if it's more of a legal subdivision.
Can't do that.
Huh? Can't do it that way?
You can't do a subdivision.
No.
You're doing a subdivision by sale, which is not allowed.
Or the creation of a subdivision.
Well, the problem with it is that if it's your wife's mother, and you see, that's the problem, because he got it from his mother one time. He could actually put an additional dwelling if he doesn't exceed the zoning capacity, the density for the zoning, but since it's not his mother's direct heir, then she wouldn't be able to allow, they wouldn't be allowed to do that either.
Right.
Yeah.
We can give a variance as to,
Yeah, you could go to the Board of Adjustments and ask for a variance on the density, on the, well,
on the second dwelling.
I think you
On
would
the
be
second
better
dwelling,
off
yeah.
on doing that is going to the Board of Adjustments and then letting them, they can make all these variances. We don't have that authority.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to look up, that the family partition in and of itself is a variance to the otherwise
Yeah,
normal
it's a variance,
subdivision
yeah.
rules.
but it
All
doesn't,
all
but
we're
it
doing is
doesn't
asking
meet the
for the one-
requirements.
the one
No, I know,
variance.
but he's asked, and this is what I'm saying, is he wants to give us a variance to a family partition. We get criticized enough and chastised enough for not following the law, which I don't know that we've ever not followed the law. But this is one of these situations where we're kind of bound by what the parish council passes, and they say this is the requirements for a family partition. If you don't meet those requirements, I mean, I feel sympathetic for you, but I don't know that we have the authority to act outside of
Yeah.
the land development code.
That's what I was trying to figure out, if there's another way to accomplish what he wants
Well,
to accomplish.
Well, variance
within
to
the-
the variance to the family partition is a variance. The family partition is already a hardship variance, and I know we've had this issue come up before.
We're going to hardship, but it's variance.
It's well, it talks about hardships, and that's what I was trying to find here real quickly.
So what about the Board of Adjustments for a variance
Board of
on
Adjustments.
the three, on the?
Yeah, they could,
Yeah.
they could
on air?
potentially give you,
Yeah.
So we go before the Board of Adjustments to ask for a variance on him receiving another
classifi-
lot through the family partition. and
No,
come back to
No,
the
it'd
board.
be-
No.
no.
No, the variance you're gonna ask for is the density.
Classifications of the person who can reside in a second residence on the property.
Yeah.
correct.
So you wouldn't partition out the property, you would ask for a variance to allow him to put a trailer on that property to allow the mother-in-law to live on it, which would be a
Well, He's
variance.
gonna purchase the land from his mom to put the mobile home on there for, I wouldn't think his mom would want the mother-in-law just living on his property. I mean, he's gonna purchase the land from the mom to put the mother-in-law on the property.
Well, but, and then
But-
also he comes into the point of, will his mortgage allow that to even happen?
No, it doesn't. So he'd
That's why
have
we're
to,
having to create a separate lot for it.
Right.
and that's the thing, is we can't create a separate lot through a family partition because he doesn't meet the requirements. So the only way to allow it would be whoever the current property owner is, to then, that person allow the trailer to be put on the property for the mother-in-law to live in, and for that to get a variance of the code requirements as to how many residences can be on the property and who can live in them. That he can do, but
Yeah.
Cody?
You have any
I mean,
children?
he could go that route,
they're not 18.
They're not of proper age yet.
but if he owns a lot.
And they wouldn't be
if he owns
living
a
in
lot
the
next
trailer.
door,
But they could
he
live
could
with
probably
with his
carve
mother
it
on the
out,
trailer.
buy it, include, and make it part of lot B5, A2,
We can't get mortgage.
well, he just have to go refinance his loan. See if he can get it done that way.
We feel for you. We really do. We're trying to come up with what we can do to help.
No worries, I'm not mad at you guys, I know you gotta follow the rules.
Do we have any other options that you can see offhand, Cody?
No, because the family partition in and of itself, like Matt
Right.
said, is a variance, and you'd be actually give a variance to a variance, and I don't think you can do that.
If he refinanced the property,
If he refinanced, he
Would
might be
that-
able to.
would he be
Could he
able to
read
do it?
could he repartition it to his direct heirs? To his children?
It would all depend on the size. You'd have to get, Eric, would he have enough property to do that?
The
He's
issue-
not
Or to one
carving-
of his
The problem
children?
is, I don't think he's carving this out of his lot. He's trying to.
No,
carve
he's
out
carving it out of
lot.
his mother's lot.
She's already done the family partition,
Right.
so it's done, it's over. She doesn't have the right to
Right.
partition again.
But wait a minute, but the mother did the family partition and gave it to whom?
But she retained that portion of the property.
right.
And
You
now
can
she's trying
only-
to carve out another tract.
You can only do one family partition, and
Yeah,
You
you're
do
done.
multiple
That's
family
it.
partitions, if you only give one.
It sounds like
one
your best
child,
bet,
one lot.
it sounds like your best bet is with the Board of Adjustments to get that changed, and I don't know if it comes back to us after that.
Because you wouldn't be subdividing property at that point in time. You'd just be asking to put a second residence on a tract of land that doesn't meet the current zoning requirements for that.
That doesn't meet the density requirements.
Well, it's not so much a density issue because it's all going to be on one tract. The zoning code allows for secondary residences on the same tract of property for certain classifications of family members. But the problem is that his mother and his mother-in-law are not related to where the code would allow that currently, so he'd need a variance.
that's
for
what he's
that.
seeking the
Variance
variance from,
Yes.
is that part of the code.
We just don't
That's
have the authority.
That's the
Which-
part you need a variance for.
Which has to
that's
go
gonna
to
be a Board of
adjustments.
Adjustments
We don't have the authority to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna recommend that we, make a motion to deny and recommend that you do go to the Board of Adjustments on this.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Schexnayder, second by Mr. Christie. All in favor of denial? Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right, item number 13 is a public hearing to approve or deny the following preliminary plats. 13A is the Copperhead Industrial Subdivision Phases 1 and 2 major revisions. MR Engineering and Surveying, Mr. Robertson is here today. Good to see you again,
Glad to see y'all again.
even
too.
though it's not soccer season yet.
Right, under friendly circumstances tonight.
Right. Just don't yell at me.
Right. So yes, here with MR Engineering here tonight, representing the developer of Copperhead subdivision. We're just asking for your approval.
All right, staff?
What they're trying to do is they want to subdivide, I'm sorry, excuse me. They want to revise the preliminary plat because it was originally submitted and approved as one phase. And they would like to have it go into phase 1 and phase 2. They propose on putting a temporary T-turnaround at what would be the end of phase 1 currently. He'd like to move forward and be able to subdivide a lot off of, out towards the front. And then they would come back for their final plat for phase 1, and then when they finish the road, 3 months, 4 months, whatever that would be, then they would come back for their final plat for phase 2. So you'd basically be allowing them to separate the original one-phase development into 2 phases, and then also granting the, allowing them, I guess, granting the variance for them to put the temporary T-turnaround at the end of phase 1.
All right, let's go ahead and open a public hearing on this. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak? And we'll close the public hearing, and I'll open it to the commissioners for questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Yes, the current road, does it end at that line, dividing line between phase 1 and 2? Is that where it ends now?
Yes, sir.
That is it. So it'll continue on back, and the cul-de-sac will be placed there, okay. All right.
Is there a reason why you chose to put it and stop it at that point already?
It had the developer request it there. It had something to do with the fence that's on the right-hand side. You'll see that dark line goes across. There was a fence there that had some demising line that, was particularly important to them, that it in there. That's all it was, nothing.
But what I'm kind of getting at is that you didn't know that we would, consider this, and yet you've built out a road and you've stopped at this magic point.
Mhm.
Whereas in the preliminary plat, it would go all the way. And so realistically speaking, there's a reason why, and I'm trying to get really the reason why this was stopped. This was obviously planned.
Money. is
Okay.
the-
That's what I need to know.
The right answer.
The big boy.
The activity levels in the industrial were busier months ago, and so we had anticipated going the whole way. It's been slower, so we didn't.
Okay.
So my only concern when this was brought to me was I wanted engineering to be able to review it and say if phase two never gets built, does the drainage and traffic and everything submitted with the
That's
original
my-
preliminary plat still function properly? So I think Eric had John checked into that and said it was okay.
Yeah, well, the proper process, if you all approve it tonight, then we would, as the ERA, go back and look at the approved construction plans and see what would be necessary, if anything, to, to address this concept. It wouldn't be worthwhile to review those plans, go through that effort to find out for some reason you all, for some reason said that you didn't approve this. So like a typical plat review process, you go through this, you all approve it, then it makes sense to figure out exactly in this unique situation what needs to be reviewed, if anything, maybe 2 construction plan sheets, or just some additional notes and some other items that we can address, and then we move on and take care of it. They're already in the middle of construction.
What do we define as construction for this, by the way?
Well, I think paving on the ground's pretty good.
Okay,
The road has run to that point already.
okay.
I just want to make sure that by subdividing this into 2 different phases, we're not relieving them of any obligation for any conditions that may have been put on the property with regards to traffic mitigation or anything, that by subdividing this, we're not making some sort of a precedent that they don't have to comply with some conditions that were put on the
No,
property.
they're not subdividing anything. They're just splitting the project, the same number of lots, they're just splitting it into 2 phases.
But I mean, it's not this is not a situation where there are certain conditions on if they build out the entire phase
Yeah,
as it is
no, I mean,
now,
there were no
and
other
that by separating
conditions.
it into 2 phases, we're relieving them of some obligation to.
I may add, that's a great question. Sometimes you see it's in residential, a certain number of
Right.
lots is a trigger point for a traffic requirement. Commercial is a little different, to where they're doing a traffic study anticipating square footage you really don't know yet. That's the driver for trips, is a commercial thing. So they already gone through the traffic process. So it's a good question, but that is not a concern on this one. And actually, the back lot actually had an approval based on a site plan to apply the necessary detention at that time. So there's no concerns on this one.
And this is not setting a precedent for anything in residential construction where a turn lane or something may have been required, and then somebody decides to lop off the back half of a subdivision into a second phase in order to get out of putting in those turn
I would say it's a
lanes.
case by case, and there's a reason why we have this forum here for you all to see
why
those
it's
cases.
coming
But
back to y'all.
commercial's a little bit
Talk through
different.
this thing.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the creation of the 2 phases, subject to review by the ERA, and require the developer to make whatever changes to the plan, to the traffic or drainage, and perform any required work therein.
All right, I got a motion to approve by Mr. Dumas.
Because the commission staff also recommended that there be a condition that the remainder of the street be built out within a
Right.
certain time period.
That's my biggest issue.
I think the street will have to be built out in phase 2, right? Staff?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The rest of the road is going to have to be built when they come in to build.
Yes.
To develop phase 2, right?
Yes.
They won't be able to use that lot until the road's built.
But you've got a T turnaround instead of a cul-de-sac there, so if they
Oh,
never come back,
understood.
so if they never
And
come
an
back for
industrial.
phase 2.
Right.
you're
Yeah,
stuck
well, I
with the
mean,
T
lot
turn.
2 goes all the way around the rear of the site and comes all the way to lot 1 on the west side of the street. So they would have street all the way, probably halfway or a third of the way through lot 2. So they would have access to lot 2.
All right, so let me
Yeah.
ask you a question. How much time to finish the road?
This project is purely speculative, similar to the first one we did called Talon Industrial. So it's hard to say. It's really market driven. May I suggest if we don't ever go into phase 2, that we just put a cul-de-sac at the end of phase 1 within a 2-year period? Is that
How about
reasonable?
this? How about if I amend the condition so that the entirety of lot 2 is part of phase 2?
Well, but that's the whole thing, Julio. That's where their drainage servitude, that's where they had a detention pond. I mean, they had a lot of mitigation factors in that portion that they would then have to remove into lots 3 and 1 perhaps. And at that point, we're not talking about a minor change, we're
just
talking about a
major
major change.
I'm just trying to find
I'm
an
not
option.
sure I understand that question. Because all the detention exists, the road exists up to the phase line, it's all built already. I'm not sure
Okay, so
exactly what-
detention and everything
Yeah,
that
it's all built,
is
yes.
in phase
Yeah.
2,
Right. Yeah,
that's all
detention for
built.
Phase 2 is built, yeah, it's all built.
Okay,
Right.
just the road is not,
Right,
basically.
correct.
All right, but developmental lot 2 should not occur until the rest of the road is built.
But
So you can
phase
have
2
1 and
goes,
3.
but phase 2 has 2,000 feet of frontage on the road that we already built. So phase 2 lot 2 goes all the way down here to phase 1. This is all part of lot 2.
So they
I-
can,
I understand that. I'm just saying, you've got lot 1 and lot 3, and you got maybe 2/3 of the road. To get the rest of, the third of the road, that's where the bulk of lot 2 is. So, I'm just trying to find a happy medium here to make it work for you.
because otherwise what's going to happen is they'll never come back for the second file and you'll be stuck with a T turnaround at the end of this road in the industrial subdivision.
Which is gonna be
That's-
horrible.
Yes.
I'm
One-
just not,
One thing you might be able to do is Sean just suggested is to create the lot behind lot 1 and stop and create additional lot and just end it at phase 1, at the end of phase 1. And allow lot 2 to be in the rear portion in phase 2. If you created an additional lot, they wouldn't be necessarily losing a lot.
Will creating a fourth lot be a major
yeah, I
change?
mean, a lot of these changes that we're talking about triggers that major change.
No, but I mean, that's what, they're here at the planning
Yeah,
commission
but
right
even at a
now.
major change, the only requirement is to come back to you guys for
Yeah, I
consideration.
mean, they're here
So,
right now.
Eric, you're creating a fourth lot, would that be, do you think you could do that now?
Well, I mean, you subdividing on something that hadn't been accepted as a right-of-way yet, you could do it in the preliminary plat phase, and then when they came back and got their final plat for phase 1, then that lot would be created, and they would still have 3 lots, but then they'd have a fourth lot in the rear of it that would consist in phase 2.
But you still have the T turnaround. What if we just say, change that to a cul-de-sac, and then whenever they extend the road, they just,
Well, I mean, they would need to change it to almost like
It
that.
becomes a
that
roundabout.
Roundabout.
It becomes a
style.
roundabout.
The idea behind that design of that roundabout is probably eventually they want to connect off of that and expand. I mean, that's done predictably planned. That type of infrastructure for everything
I don't
on
mind the
that.
cul-de-sac at that end being temporary in nature. Maybe the extension of it is gravel or whatever. But I like the idea of creating another lot, and if this fence line is critical, then make sure your phase 2 line follows that fence line so that it doesn't affect lot 3, doesn't split lot 3. So you got 4 lots.
So I think what I'm hearing, and I think I'll let Ty speak for himself, but I think what I'm hearing is, we'll have lot 1 on the left side, we'll have lot 2, that will now end at the phase line. We'll have a lot in the back that has no access, no ability to develop it because it doesn't have a road to it yet. We'll leave the temporary two-turnaround, and the fourth lot will be what is now lot 3.
Right,
Kind
except that your T turnaround, what I need you to do is just make it circular so a truck can turn around. Just make it out of gravel temporarily.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this close now, and I'm having issues with one lot being a part of 2 different phases. Because how could you ever sell that if you never did a final plat on phase 2? Then that portion of lot 2 that's in phase 1, it's not a merchantable lot at that point in time.
Right.
If we came back and divided it off on Copperhead Drive, it would be.
So we're gonna divide that lot into 2 lots and make the phase line a lot line.
Right, we're just gonna make, where it says phase 1 and phase 2, we're just gonna make that the lot line for phase 2, for lot 2. And then lot 2 will become lot 3, and
Yeah.
lot 3 will be lot 4. And then we'll
Yeah,
put
but
in
can we-
temporary
again-
cul-de-sac, limestone.
And the north line of lot 3 would be, the north line of lot 3 will be that fence line.
Right.
And you'll change the phase line to that location.
Yeah, and the phase line really is, yes.
Again, though, we're bordering that line of major change, and they're here for this as a minor change.
No,
Cody?
sir, we're here for a major change.
Oh, it's a
No,
major
it's a
change?
major
It's-
decision.
Okay, I thought it said minor. I
It's minor
apologize.
subdivision, major.
Okay, my bad.
But if you go with the temporary turnaround like you're talking about, and they never come back and extend that road, you now still have
They
a,
gotta come back to us to do something with lot two, that's phase two, so they
unless
gotta-
unless it's not the market doesn't demand it, and it sits empty, and then you still have this temporary turnaround at the end of an industrial park. I think it needs to be more of a permanent turnaround. And then they can either, when they come back for lot, I don't know if that's lot 2 or 4 under the new scenario, they can either convert it back to regular or basically make it a roundabout and just build
And
straight
also
off the
what
bat.
happens if, very similarly to what we experienced if they don't do any construction in that area for 2 years, is that phase gonna be voided?
No, because the work will have started on the preliminary plat.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm saying. I'm gonna make a substitute motion. I just don't agree with this. I'm gonna vote to
Dividing a
deny.
project from one phase into two?
I just don't agree with how y'all are trying to do it, so that's my opinion on
What's
this.
the problem with it? We're just simply,
I foresee that there could be, like he's saying, there's a money issue, so we have gotten an agreement on this. And if you run out of money, if it becomes an issue, we don't get the proposed street that we're talking about. We don't get the proposed rounding of that turn. Your plans are not our problem. Your financial issues are not our problem. We have a preliminary plot. Unfortunately, if you've, made bad financial decisions or the market is that's not really something that we're,
so you're
I
saying
just
not
don't feel
allowed to
that
phase
that's-
a project? That seems. it's
I just don't agree with
we're
it.
just getting-
So on that, I just
All
don't
right.
think this is the right way to do it.
So you have a substitute motion to deny?
Yes.
All right, we have a substitute motion. Mr. Scheck-Snyder's made a substitute motion to Mr. Dumas's original motion to deny the revision. Do I have a second on the substitute motion? All right, we'll go back to Mr. Dumas's original motion.
I'm gonna make a slight modification to the motion,
Okay.
if I may. I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna move to approve with the following conditions. Subject to review of the construction plans by the ERA, require them to make whatever changes the ERA deems are necessary, perform all required work deemed necessary by the ERA, convert the T turnaround into a suitable cul-de-sac that's temporary in nature to allow for adequate turnaround. Create a fourth lot and have the phase 2 line follow the fence line east of the proposed road, and that no development take place on lot 2 until such time as the road is extended and completed as shown on the preliminary plan.
Question regarding that. If they do go to phase 2, will they have to build out along this design, the road design, that infrastructure design?
Yes.
What do you mean by temporary turnaround?
I don't want to burden them with the requirement to create a right-of-way and then turn around having to vacate it, so they could conceivably do it with a temporary easement on those lots to create a suitable turnaround that they can vacate easier than having created a road right-of-way and then having to vacate a road right-of-way. That's a legal burden that they shouldn't have to do.
And is all the subsurface drainage currently in place?
And Julio, just.
All right, we have a motion by Mr.
to add-
Dumas, which is,
Just one more thing to clear before you add to the motion. Add into your motion that a lot cannot be part of phase 1 and phase 2. It needs to be all included in phase 1, because I don't know how you sell a lot.
Oh, that's, okay, and the lot, there can be no lot that traverses the phase line.
all right. Mr. Dumas made the motion, Mr. Furman seconded the motion just a second ago.
Actually, doesn't 3
So we'll go ahead and
traverse
vote
the
on the
phase line?
motion that has been made and seconded.
Actually, doesn't lot 3 traverse the phase line also?
No,
move the
the
phase
fence
line.
line is
They're
the
gonna,
fence
they're gonna
line.
move that, they're gonna move that lot.
Okay.
All right, all in favor of the motion that's been made and seconded by Mr. Dumas?
All right.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. 13B is the Talon Industrial Park major revision. You ready again, Mickey?
hello, glad to see y'all. Glad it's non-controversial once again.
Off and running.
Yeah, this one is ugly.
This one is completely constructed, everything is there. We're trying to get to a final plat, but we have to come back and revise the preliminary plat to make it public streets. So that's where we're at. We're trying to revise the preliminary plat so that we can file the final plat next month.
Yeah, and we're gonna leave it turnaround in an industrial park.
Yes.
How does a semi-truck maneuver that?
Have any issues, Ty? Because it's been in operation for quite a while.
Yeah, the rear building has you can see a little U shape at the end. It's actually about 100 feet wide, 80 feet wide back there. And they just nose in to the rear of the property, and then they can back up onto that portion. It's probably 80 feet deep by 80 feet wide that backs up onto that portion of the property.
We don't have a site plan, we just have this little line drawing.
Okay.
So you're saying it's already in use?
Yeah, this is built.
It's all built.
Okay.
Just don't go back there when there's a bunch of semi-trucks.
Yeah, I know.
Let's get staff's opinion on this, please.
Just a point of clarification, because it is an industrial subdivision, they're not subject to the infrastructure development district. Right, that's only on residential subdivisions.
And just to hold tight with the forum, Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on the public hearing on this? So we will open and subsequently close the public hearing. There are only 2 people left, including, or in addition to us. All right, any other comments and/or a motion?
Move to approve.
I got a motion to approve by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Furman. All in favor? Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. And the second to last item, thank you, Mr. Robinson, good seeing you. Second to last item on the agenda is the old business, and this is the site plan approval to lapse without final approval or extension granted update for the Family Court Mobile Home Park expansion. It was approved in March 8th of 2017. A 6-month extension was granted on September 13th, 2017. A 12-month extension was granted on March 14th, 2018, and a 6-month extension was granted on February 13th, 2019. Gentlemen, are y'all here on this? This is not your issue, okay?
We've been in discussions with Mr. Cluot, and he's planning something else for the property, and he asked, last month he contacted us, and we told him it was up again, and he said, just go ahead and let it lapse.
Move to rescind.
All right, motion by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Furman. You beat your Aaron, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Final item on the agenda, motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all who are left.